I like your optimism, Tasneem. Okay. Welcome to Al Muntada Debates. It's 3 o'clock Eastern Time. On the other side of the world, it's, I think, 10 p.m. Damascus time. Thank you, gentlemen, for making this. Thank you for everyone joining us, wherever you're joining us from. Al Muntada Debate is a series where we host people who are experts on Syria, mostly Syrian voices who can tell us about specific aspects of Syria's transformation after the liberation of December 8th, 2024. We're always looking at facets of Syria's development in terms of politics, in terms of security, but also in terms of economy. And today, I am unbelievably happy and unbelievably proud to be given this opportunity to host two people who I'd like to call my friends, but also I'm very honored to know leading, interesting, driven, achieved gentlemen younger than myself, with hair, and I'm very envious, who are now in Damascus and who are going to talk to us about Syria's economic prospects for the in the now, but also in the coming period. I'm joined by Dr. Sinan Fatahit, my friend and mentor and cheerer, and a great guy altogether, and by my other very, very good friend, Dr. Karam Shaar. Both of them are going to introduce themselves, although I think they need no introduction, but just as a formality. And then we're going to go into the conversation. All I'm just going to ask everyone joining us right now, this is being live streamed on YouTube. This is being live streamed on Zoom as well, and it will be recorded for future reference for people to watch and rewatch and get some information out of this. All I'm just going to ask you is kindly, when you're joining the Zoom call, please refrain from opening your video cameras, because both our guests are streaming from Damascus, and if you know, internet in Syria is not that great, so any type of overload of the live stream will be impacting their capacity to participate and will damage the viewing experience for everyone. So thank you for joining. And I will first ask Dr. Sinan Fatahit to introduce himself. Please lead the way, and then Dr. Karam, you can also do a brief introduction of who you are and what you do. Dr. Sinan.
Yeah, with great pleasure. Thank you, Jamal, for having me today, and always a pleasure to share the platform with Karam. Hopefully today will lead, an insightful discussion. I am a cybersecurity expert by profession. This is what I did my PhD on, and I've wondered, and since 2015, more on economy, working mainly for Umran Strategic Studies, but also EUI, the European University Institute, as well as the Atlantic Council. Since December 9th, I've had the pleasure to move back to Damascus after the fall of the regime, and I've been working on the ground, still on political economy, but also as a practitioner, leading an investment fund called Invest in Syria.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Sinan. Dr. Karam.
Again, thank you very much for having me, and greetings from Damascus. It's always great to join from Damascus. I mean, as long as the internet connection cooperates. Sinan and I have actually also had the pleasure of co-authoring a report together for the European University Institute on the electricity sector. I am the director of Karam Shaar Advisory Limited, a political economist, although by education I'm only an economist, but I'm interested in politics, so I try to steer in that direction wherever possible. Our advisory at the moment is involved in multiple projects, be it on sanctions or the banking sector or the operations of multiple international institutions. and some Western governments. I look forward to the discussion here.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for the introduction. I'm again quite honored to host you. And if you're Syrian in the audience, you know we're not trying to be Beit Fisto, but I really admire and like these gentlemen, and I call them personal friends. So I'm doubly happy to do that. Now, beyond that, if you can please, I would like to start by both of you giving us a kind of an over image, a meta image, and a large overview of what you see is the Syria's economy's macro image, as in not on the level of specific industries, etc. In terms of the global economy of Syria, where are we right now, and what do you see the most pressing needs that Syria's economy needs to address? And I would start with you, Dr. Sinan.
Yeah, thank you, Jamal. Well, I mean, economy is definitely at the heart of today's transition of nearly 60 years of Ba'ath rule. I'm not going to waste too much of your audience time on describing how the economy was run and how it was completely destroyed during the last 14 years. But it is at the heart of the debate today because it is the main agenda of everyone in Syria, loyalist or in opposition, youth or older generations. The country, the local communities are all looking to recover after this long years of war that have destroyed and depleted their reserves, that also during which they witnessed the destruction of major parties of the infrastructure, especially in production and agriculture, albeit or even industrial production. There is the loss of purchasing power, the loss of jobs and perspective for many youth that for now over a decade the only dream, their dream was to leave Syria and to work in either a GCC country or across the pond in Europe. So, and the current transitional government understand this reality very well. This is why it also has focused a lot of its narrative and rhetoric around the economic recovery. If you will, of communication is on new projects, is on new investments, on facilitating foreign investment in Syria, discussing with the Saudis or with the Turks or any of the countries how to invest in Syria. It seems to be trumping over all other subjects, including security, which is obviously a very important aspect of any transitional period. So now we're nearly 10 months since the fall of the regime. Have we witnessed the start of the kicking off the recovery of the Syrian economy? I believe we are witnessing some sparks here and there, but the machine is not yet rolling. There are some early indications that help us be more optimistic, while others are a bit concerning, and maybe we'll have more time and to talk about this later.
Excellent. That's I like the sparks and the engine and the kick-starting metaphors. I'm going to utilize them in a sec, but thank you, Sinan, for this And allow me, please, to call you by first name, if
Please do.
Thank you very
Please
much.
do.
Same for you, Karam. If I can please call you by first name, with all due respect to your titles and your capacities. But Karam, please fill me in on your side of this. What do you see? Sinan has just given us his macro image of the economy since the fall of the Assad regime. What is yours?
I feel like, I mean, there are two questions in there. So the macro picture and the needs. I find it quite interesting that we still do not really agree about the starting point, as in what really happened during the conflict. We have only like a rough understanding of what happened, you know, and that's because of um, hmm,
Okay, that's fine. That was just
yeah,
a glitch. Go ahead.
cool. So I was just saying, uh, because of the absence of statistics, and even when they do exist, they're incredibly difficult to interpret. They have geographic coverage issues, they have accuracy issues.
Mm.
What we have is rough, you know, and that's why what we need at the moment is basically a national assessment, you know, of where we actually stand, because without knowing where you are, it's going to be quite difficult for you to begin even thinking about where you're headed. What we do know is that uh, a few things, you know, we know that sectorally, yes, the economy has been hit quite hard, but the sector that has been hit the hardest is the industrial sector, you know,
Yes.
as opposed to the service sector, because that one has generally shorter supply chains. It's far more agile. It can readapt and move geographically. And that's basically because it's driven mostly by human beings. So we know that the industrial sector has been hit much harder than other sectors. Agriculture, yes, to a certain extent, but much less so, and services less so. Also, we know that geographically the distribution of damage is extremely uneven, and this has very serious implications because when you talk about a vision, an economic vision from the state that is centered around the private sector, you wonder, well, how or why would any business ever come back to a city like Deir ez-Zor, for instance, you know, that is now more or less completely destroyed. So without actually the state leading the way into some of those very badly destroyed areas, the private sector would hold back because there's no economic ecosystem for them to plug into. And the last but not least is wealth distribution. We've seen a complete erosion of the middle class. And as they say, this is the backbone of any functioning democracy. You know, any thriving country that would have like a reasonable level of political participation, of pluralism, of accountability, they tend to have that as a common characteristic. You know, the middle class is at least alive. For us, that has been more or less wiped. And the rich, you know, the richest in society have also been, for the most part, replaced, you know, during the conflict. So you still have the ultra rich segment, but it now consists of individuals and families that were not traditionally rich. And I'm making generalizations here, but that's
Yes.
roughly the case. Now, I'll just answer the other elements because I feel like these introductory remarks are helpful for just setting the scene. So, with respect to current needs, I mean, obviously, you talk to government officials as well, they tell you something that is true, which is we need everything. But the question I think is about how do you sequence these needs, right? Because there's also a cascading impact for some of the choices that you make. You make a choice now that could have an impact on multiple other
So
processes that come
the hierarchy
afterwards.
of priorities, right, Karam?
Yes, exactly. So, and in there, I feel there is so much talk about some impediments to economic recovery that are now luckily being removed, but not fully. such as sanctions. I feel we're definitely headed in the right direction. I suspect in November and December we'll hear also good news about the state sponsorship of terrorism label and the Caesar Act. But these are important to remove, but they're not sufficient on their own, and as in necessary but insufficient. Now, what I think is definitely lacking at the moment, and that's why we're not seeing much traction since the downfall of the regime, is clarity regarding the future. And clarity for many people is often mixed with positive outlook. It, believe me, quite often doesn't have to be even a positive outlook. It's just clarity. Can you tell me, is this going to be a united country again, or what? Can you tell me what regulatory framework would you be following? Are you going to privatize the state sector or not? And so on and so forth. Which brings me to the other two needs that I will conclude with. There is, and again, if you set your expectations right, I think it's too premature to expect this from the government, but it's definitely still not there, which is the vision. So what is it that you're trying to achieve? Initially, it was pretty clear that the government has a strong preference for deregulation, for privatization, for encouraging business development, and so on. Maybe with the exception of the latter, the support to the private sector, the first two are now not as clear, and you get mixed signals, from different government officials, and it's no more that clear to me that they want, for example, to privatize, or they don't want the state to play a leading role in some sectors. And for good or for bad, we have good experiences around the world that go around that spectrum, but it's the vision that is still missing. You still have just mixed messages that are incoherent. Now, the final one is implementation. We're nowhere near implementing a new vision. We're just living, as they say, from hand to mouth. We're just trying to push this one day at a time and making it work, but it's still too early to talk about this. But I think we will face challenges when we get to that.
So let me jump off your metaphor here. And if I'm translating this from your highbrow language to dumb it down for a third grader like myself, what you're telling me is the building has come down. We're still living in the rubbles. The architect has not come in with any master plan for the new building. The debris removal is moving on, but it's kind of sort of not happening at the same pace. Some of these working people come and remove quickly. Some others are taking their sweet time. Some have tools, some don't. And these don't necessarily talk to one another. So the work is kind of fits and starts, while we are sitting in this building and sheltering ourselves from the element, given whatever tools we have at hand. Now, there's a big thing coming. We had a penury of cement and steel to reconstruct our homes because somebody was sanctioning these. These sanctions are being removed. But apart from the sanctions being removed and the promise of some cement and some steel rebars coming in the future, we don't have anything else. Is that a bleaker picture than the one that you were trying to paint, or is this really dumbing it down for my understanding as a third grader correct?
I love the analogy, and I think for the most part, I agree. And what I'm saying here is not necessarily scientific. This is my personal judgment of what's happening. What I would add to what you mentioned is quite often we're not really telling those who are trying to help us remove the rubble what we really need. And when they extend their hand and say, look, we can get you a few trucks to remove the rubble from the building, the metaphorical building that you're referring to, we're happy to provide you with X, Y, and Z. It's also common that we are unable as the government to engage with them properly and benefit from that support. It's quite often an issue that there is support that the government is unable to receive, and obviously this is for a good reason. State institutions have been decayed, have been hollowed out, so they're really unable to benefit from that support that is being extended.
That is
by many parties.
That was my next question. You're bouncing off my mind, Karam, here. And I want to ask Sinan and then you, because you have to interface with the Syrian state institutions as they stand. The interim government, as we can call it right now, the de facto, let's say, legitimate government of of Syria. You're interfacing with them on multitudes of levels. You meet these officials, etc., etc. Now, tell me, and like as brief as you can, and do you feel that there is any level of competence with the new rulers of Damascus? And I'm not talking about the technocratic first crust of government, because obviously, for example, the Minister of Economy has certain experience. The governor of the central bank has certain experiences, all of whom are qualified, have previous governmental and international, pedigree. We might agree or disagree with certain decisions that they're making, but they're competent. I'm talking about the bread and butter workforce in these ministries and competent authorities, number one, and number two, decision making level, which is basically the president and his close circle of, let's call them advisors, the people who came from Idlib. Do they have the pedigree? Do they have the understanding of the economy, and are they doing their best? If not understanding, and one cannot blame them, they're not graduates of political economy or economists, and that's not their job. But are they giving people like you the time of the day? Do they listen when you say, oh, we think you ought to be doing something that way, or please refrain from doing something that way because it's going to go into a different direction, etc. So do they have the capacity? Do they allow experts to do their job? And are they listening to people like you? Sinan.
It's a very complex question with not a so simple answer. There's a huge variation from one institute to another. Some have proven to be much more open for suggestions and much more open also to include world-class, experts, Syrians and non-Syrians, to be present, to advise, and also to participate in strategic planning. Some others have proven to be a little bit more stubborn, but the general sense that I have that they are open to listen. And I haven't yet faced a situation where I was told from the beginning, no, don't speak. We're not here. We're not asking for your opinion. They do listen. Now, the issue is not it's not the listening piece. Is how you translate the suggestions, that you get into actionable items, and this is tricky, right? Why is it tricky? Because first of all, there is wave after wave after wave of Syrian experts, Syrian diaspora, foreign investors knocking on their doors. All of them are coming with a lot of ideas. A lot of them are contradictory with each other. And at the end of the day, you have to recognize that the person in front of you doesn't know what he doesn't know, right? So you keep preaching about something and methods or ideas, which the person in front of you doesn't really have the tools to be able to measure them and to put them in the spectrum or to understand them and to be able to do the differentiation, right? So they do a lot of listening because they need to be able to filter. Now, are they able to filter? That's an important question to ask. And here it varies. Like, for example, it seems, at least from our bird view, that the Ministry of Energy is doing a more decent job than others. right? We can also see it to a certain degree in the increase of number of electricity hours per day. The economy, for example, the Ministry of Finance seems to be doing a decent job of reaching out to stakeholders. If you follow up up closely, you know, they do meet with the business community a lot. That doesn't necessarily translate into an inclusive exercise, but they do go through the motions of meeting with the shareholders, right? Which is, you know, something that wasn't really the natural trait of the government in Syria before. The Ministry of Economy is a different question. It's a different issue. It seems that, for example, the Ministry of Economy, which is a very important one because it merged the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Trade, and the Ministry of Economy, right? All of them in three. The relationship between, for example, Syrian industrials, whether in Aleppo or in Damascus, there is a lot of friction between them and the ministry. Why? Because there is no trust capital, right? So that's another layer of complexity. And it goes both ways. Like if you do, for example, ask the ministry, deputy ministry, who is very influential, he would say each time we ask our fellow industrials in Syria for data, they feed us wrong data or wrong information. And add to that also a level of mistrust that these are people who used to enrich themselves before. Why should I trust them now, right? And add another layer of complexity that also Syrian industrial really haven't really went into a transformation the last 20 years. So they are a bit archaic. Some of the things that they want to save are not worth saving. So the communication channel is not working well. Whether there is a capacity issue or a competency issue, yes, of course, there is one. But again, we see that there are smart people in front of us. They are learning on the job. Are they learning as fast as they should? That's a debatable question. It changes a lot from one sector to another. But lately, at least in the last quarter, I've been witnessing more and more openness toward experts, toward international also organizations. But I come back to a very fundamental issue that Karam raised really at the beginning. Our biggest problem today, that most of this, ideas, projects, all of these are focused on the result, on where we want to be, right? But there is little effort being done on completing. No, the process is very important, but even more important and fundamentally important, which is the baseline assessment. We don't have a full one that allow us to understand exactly where we should be prioritizing. Like, for example, if today you ask both me and Karam, what are the priorities of economic recovery? If we do agree that, but that's by pure chance, because maybe, we have similar ideas. It's not because we have the same data.
Gotcha. That's a great segue for me to go and burden Karam right now with the complete. Let's say the second part of this very complex question. It is complex. Well, I was trying to simplify it as much as I can. So sorry if it sounded a little complex, but we are tackling a very complex issue indeed, which is where do we stand right now? And in the absence of the social capital of trust, is it equal, as Sinan was putting this as well, the government or the current government doesn't trust the industrialists, for example. But so do the industrialists not trust the government. Is this mistrust equal? And by that, I don't mean the quantity of it. I mean the damage of the trust from the government, the mistrust from the government towards everybody around it. Because it's, if I remember correctly, and I was in Syria in August, I remember one of the things that the refrains that I heard often repeated over and over and over again is that these people coming to government right now don't trust anyone. They have a huge mistrust of anyone who was left in government, anyone who is coming to government, anyone who is an expert, anyone who is outside their ranks. They have an over amount of skepticism in anybody outside them. So is this mistrust going in both directions, as Sinan was suggesting, of equal damage? Or is the mistrust on the government side of everybody else more damaging?
Yeah. So, I mean, first, I really want to thank Sinan for his extremely nuanced, response to your question. And I'm so glad. I mean, believe me, this kind of nuance does not come from someone who is not actually on the ground. And that is what we gain by us coming back. There are no simple answers to anything. And this nuance is extremely important because without it, we just trade accusations. We wouldn't be able to work together because you can pick one of the ministries that he mentioned and use that as the generalized case and reach a completely different conclusion from if you picked another one. Now, on your question of trust, let me just first situate this. Mm-hmm. People think when you talk about trust, they think that you're talking about some fluffy notion, some pie in the sky. It's not true. Actually, economically, at the moment, what Syria needs is trust above anything else. And what is the number one economic manifestation of trust? It's credit. Now in this market, if I want, because of the lack of trust, if you ask me to lend you something, I would ask you for some exorbitant interest rate that no one would be able to do unless they're actually doing drugs. Why? Because the risk I'm actually taking is way too high because I don't trust you. I don't know what you're going to do with this money. Now, I think it's extremely natural and, to be honest, expected for all actors to have little trust in each other. That's the only thing that I would expect from a country emerging from civil war, a revolution that turned into a civil war. And your question about magnitude, I just want to say something first, which if you look at the government in its early days and you see how insular it was, how they were focusing mostly on the group that basically won militarily, be it HTS or their affiliates. And I was always arguing that, as people say that the government is afraid of them, they do not really appreciate that the government is also, it's both ways. So think of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. You're a group of just 30,000 people who managed to topple a state that is orders of magnitude bigger than you, and you're stretched way too thin. Initially, of course, you would actually work with people that you have some trust in, and then you start broadening the circle as time goes by. Now, are they broadening that circle enough? Not to my liking at all. I think they should broaden it much, much more. But the initial response was very natural, was actually expected, that they did not expand it that much. Is it really the same magnitude? Well, some directions of trust matter much, much more than others. And the magnitude also matters, but the direction. So if you have basically people who do not really have trust in state institutions, I'll give you the example again as an economist. I would just go to, say, the banking sector. So the same way you froze my account overnight, And then you told me starting from May, well, if you have fresh money, then you can withdraw and deposit as you wish. I don't know. Maybe if I deposit with you, you might tell me next year that my account is frozen and I wouldn't be able to access it anymore. How am I supposed to trust you? How am I supposed to trust your decisions? Now, you need obviously some confidence building. You need some trust building measures. And I hope we're moving in that direction. Unfortunately, I see for some groups, the opposite is happening, you know? So for some groups, if you're an Alawite, for example, they're starting, at least my reading of the situation, many are starting to believe that, well, there were some people who thought that they could like resist the government militarily. They've been suppressed. Now, their voices that believe in that are actually becoming fewer and fewer, and without increased political participation. So now this is the order of the day. Live with it. You know, that's it. From now on, you will not be you will not be joining. You will not be participating in governing the country. You will be cast aside from at least state affairs. And that level of that lack of trust, if it builds on, I believe, at one point it explodes. And if you have any testament to that, it's the March 2011 uprising. It's our own uprising. It was exactly that. It was pressure just mounting and building up and building up and building up until it just exploded.
Right. So the picture that you're painting right now, Karam, is one of, again, the thing that I want to build off of this is, I'm going to ask you to follow up on this and then transfer this to Sinan. You were just speaking in the beginning when you gave this macro image that vision is important, and that sort of, and I'm putting words in your mouth, this is my interpretation of what you're saying, so you feel free to correct me if I overreached. But my understanding of your words was, there ain't none. There's no vision yet. It still is also, I think, if I understood what you said correctly, it still is, from your vantage point of speaking to the government, but also coming to Syria and witnessing, and you can tell the key aspects of what's happening, so you can see if there is a vision that's being cooked up or not. You don't see a vision being cooked up yet. Now, with the absence of an actual vision and the absence of clear indicators of a vision being created as we speak right now, what prospects really do we have to giving people what they really need? Because if you go out on the streets of Damascus, as you gentlemen always do, and speak to people as I know you do, like other than just friends and family and people of your same socioeconomic class, you speak to people generally speaking. The one main concern is getting their lives back in order. If you don't have a home, get a home. If you don't have security for your kids in terms of food and shelter, getting that. And in terms of regaining your prospects for a better life, then having that. How can these be addressed if there is a complete lack of vision? And when do you see it forming?
I mean, I think the answer lies in a few points that relate to expectations. You know, first expectation is it really actually reasonable of us to believe that the government should have a vision 1 year on? You know, I don't think so. I think it takes much longer than that for you to have a vision. I can go and hold them accountable to not doing the obvious. For example, if they have the capacity to collect rubbish and they're not doing it, you know, and that's not really what we're seeing. You know, they're really bending backwards for the vast majority, you know, state institutions to fulfill their core functions. And I would say the vast majority of what is happening, you know, the mistakes are not really out of malice, out of maybe misunderstanding or not
learning on the job.
I mean, or yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, obviously, learning on the job. Also, there's one thing I want just a bit of a separate topic is Also, I feel when we talk about what they're doing, we need to be careful not to look too arrogant, because we really shouldn't be arrogant. We don't get to be arrogant. I mean, when they are the ones who are being paid less than $100, we don't get to be arrogant on them, or patronizing, or to tell them, no, this is not how you do it. This is how you do it. Well, easy for me to say, as the person who is far, far more privileged than them. They're the ones who accepted the burden, So that's one thing. But again, back to expectations. I said I will cover this from multiple points relating to expectations. I think if there was a mistake that they made was actually raising expectations way too much, unreasonably high early on. And this had actually the opposite impact. So when you tell people that we will increase salaries fourfold, that within a year, this passport, you will be proud of it, and so on and so forth, knowing that these are things that actually take decades, you have the opposite impact. Initially, yes, you get that exuberance, people are just elated and they're very happy about what's happening. They rush in, they try to visit, try to assess the situation. But as time goes by and realize that, well, it's really not as simple as that, you have the opposite impact where people say, nah, you know what? I went there. This country needs at least one more decade for me to come back. And because of this, and I will conclude on this note, like I was in one of the major European countries just a week ago, and I was asked, well, what do we do now to improve business relations with Syria, to reintegrate businesses? I'm like, I don't want you to do it, not now. If you want to do that, first lay the groundwork. First, work on reestablishing banking relations. Work on ensuring that your country does not prevent actually trading with Syria to begin with, and then start establishing business relations, then start establishing business councils, as opposed to just political posturing, that involves establishing business councils here and there, where all you get is businesses, they come, they sniff around, they feel like, yeah, this is going to take forever, and they just leave.
Okay, so Karam just was telling us, Sinan, that it takes time, that he's telling European counterparts, don't get too greedy and start immediately. And I totally agree that it will take time. But try and tell this, how can we sell this to Syrians who have real needs that need to be addressed yesterday, and who also, on top of it, have a psychological and emotional feeling that we have paid enough throughout the past 14 years, and we need to see results immediately. Now, their right to demand these, their right to expect these, the government, certainly in the euphoria of the liberation moment, sort of kind of not willingly, but raise these expectations even higher by over-promising what they cannot deliver based on this kind of, again, euphoric moment. People were waiting for the sanctions to be lifted. The sanctions got magically lifted. No one even in their right mind. I mean, Karam and myself were having this discussion prior, like in January, if you remember the panel that we sat on, and we were thinking it's going to take time for these sanctions to be lifted. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, the sanctions got lifted. People were waiting for these sanctions to be lifted to see money coming in, to see companies coming in and jobs being created. Jobs were not being created. So how can you sell this to everyday Syrians, telling them that it's gonna have to take some time?
Yeah. I mean, we're circuiting back to a point that both me and Karam made in different ways. A lot of it comes to communication. I believe that today it's a global trend. So Syrians are not an exception. There's nothing, there is no Syrian exceptionalism. Global politics are engaged into dogmatic, promises and not discussing fundamentals. And reality is that today you have to do a lot of groundwork to be able to come up with to build up the economy. And this starts with being very candid with the Syrian population. The Syrian population have proven to a large degree to be very disciplined and willing to participate and to have a direct stake. I think one of the mistakes that the current government is making is that they're taking too much on their own responsibility in terms of leading the transitional period. Look at all the.
Why are they doing that, Sinan? If you don't mind me asking you, what brings on this desire to overburden their shoulders? Is it just the paternalistic attitude that they have, or is it something of a fear of if we give people a little too much to do, then they might, take away some power of us, or is it some kind of benevolence? Have we lost? Oh. We seem to have temporarily lost Sinan for a bit. I think he has a connection problem. Karam, my question to you is, since I have you, what do you think brings this on? This kind of desire basically to not allow people to carry too much on their shoulders, but the government overtaking some of this burden, which is too heavy for it to be able to carry on its own? Is it some kind of paternalism? Is it some kind of, again, lack of trust or fear that their powers might be reduced? What is it?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to tell and very difficult to generalize as well. I would say above all, at least from my vantage point, it has to do with their bandwidth. They have a very limited bandwidth to actually open up to public consultation. And when it happens, it happens in a very cursory way, it doesn't feel genuine. So you have the Ministry of Finance, for instance, saying that we're opening the consultation process on the income tax law, one of the most fundamental pieces of legislation in the country. And the process is like for 3 weeks. And if you don't like something, please email me on this email address. This is not really consultation, but I think it's mostly because of the bandwidth that they have. They're extremely under-resourced to the point they can't talk to donors who can genuinely support, let alone talking to the average Syrian who might have a view on what's happening. But I would just view it like from a different point of view. I think it should be viewed as a political tactic, by them. It's not your burden. You're not supposed to actually do all of this. And it's not like it's going to be difficult for you to communicate to Syrians that, hey, by the way, what happened to this country is unprecedented. The levels of poverty we've witnessed are unprecedented, the level of destruction and so on. And therefore, we should actually work together. And hey, it's going to take a lot of time, but we should actually sit and discuss and consult with you and so on. I think that would actually make people feel much more included and would result ultimately in a better outcome.
So, Sinan, we lost you for a bit for a communication issue. Karam was generously trying to address this, but I would like you to, if you can, just briefly tell me, what do you think is the impetus behind this overburdening themselves with tasks that they know they can't carry and overpromising, and then obviously not because of some malice on their part, not because of some desire to fail, they will fall short of fulfilling these tasks. What makes them do that? Is it some kind of paternalistic trend? Is it some kind of mistrust on their part of everyone else? What do you think?
Well, I don't like to discuss intentions a lot because God only knows what's happening in their own minds and hearts. But let me tell you what should be the case. The reality is that transitional period, if you look at all literature in the world, it is one of the most challenging period in post-conflict and post-revolution, especially if it's a long one like ours and it's a destructive one like ours, and where we We've seen structural destruction also in certain state institutions, right? Not all of them, but at least some of them, especially in the security one. And it is a collective responsibility where the government have its share of responsibility. The local communities have their own share of responsibilities, but also the international community has its own share of responsibility. It is a collective effort to be able to lift up the country. And we've seen, we always discuss where is the Syrian Marshall Plan. Marshall Plan is exactly the description of what I just, prescribed, which is you have international intervention that helps you in the right way, that is shaped by the government that understand and coordinate this assistance into what serves the country the most. And also you have the local communities working hand in hand with these authorities. This is today what should be happening in Syria, and which we're not witnessing. We're saying that the government is taking too much to chew. It could be because they are already preparing the post-transitional areas. They want to create maybe, a monopole over the hearts, or create, a portfolio of successes. And this is, in my opinion, a very short-sighted strategy, because if you look at what the ministers in their different sectors and capacities, what they're working on is firefighting, because they're looking at at creating small successes. And this is good if you are running a startup, right? But if you're running a state which is even more complex than a corporate, then you need to be, constructive. There is you need to be very strategic in how you move and where you're investing, especially if you have the little resources available, as it is the case in Syria. And I mean, this is maybe the tax that we're paying for being indulged by making promises and trying to make the Syrian people happy, but is backfiring clearly, because if you do promise, for example, to double the salaries or double the hours of electricity or the bandwidth of internet or the quantity of water, and you're only achieving a fraction of that, what will happen is obviously the Syrian people will start judging your your ability to govern. If you add also to that another layer of complexity, which is regional and local security concerns, which is the case. Sweden, at the end of the day, is a security failure. Same goes with the Israeli, constant probing into Syria's security is also, the incapacity of the Syrian government to be able to deter is also all adding this huge doubts from the Syrian people. Is this government capable of leading this sensitive transitional period? And I believe that, well, I think I've written an article, I think back in January, that the Syrian honeymoon is maybe over. And I don't mean that we're already, fighting and, at each
We're not
other's throats.
divorcing anytime soon, but the
We're
honeymoon
not.
is over.
But the honeymoon was extended by miracle because of the lifting of sanctions, right? But the structural problem still exists. There needs to be a strategy, there needs to be a grand plan, right? There needs to be, okay, so I have this much money, this is how much money I can get more, and this is how I need to spend it. And I cannot make everyone happy. I can make, however, a strong, accumulation here in this area that will lead to others. And I believe that we're not seeing this. But here I want to come back very quickly to a point that Karam said, that is is it really the mandate of a transitional government to come up with a vision? Because someone could come and tell us, you know what, this is a transitional government, regardless of how long it will stay. It is not its mandate. It has not been elected. It doesn't have all the tools to be able to come up with a vision. It should just be running the show day per day. It could be the case, but
Okay,
that's not
let
the
me
government
try
is
and
doing.
venture answering that, Sinan, for you. I think what we're dancing around here, we both know that this is not a transitional government. This is a transitional phase of a government that wants to stay. That's number one. And number two, it wants to make the economic achievement to justify its presence and justify its extended period of time in ruling the country, which is an ambition that is legitimate. The problem right now is that the challenges are legion, the tools at its hand are less than optimal, and there is a bankable social capital of trust that is absent. And my question, because we're almost running out of time, I mean, I would love to continue this discussion with you, Sinan, but I want to give Karam the last word here because he needs to move pretty soon. And thank you for bearing with us, Karam. Also, both of you are doing this at an ungodly hour in Damascus time, so thank you very much. My question to you, Karam, is if you were, God forbid, a government official responsible for kickstarting the economy, out of these three layers of or orders of importance, which Sinan was telling us about, that you had spoken about, so we were both in agreement. We're talking international, we're talking international regional, we're talking government, and we're talking local business community, but also local community. In this picture as you see it right now, where, because you cannot kickstart all, I mean, optimally, these are multilateral and have to go in tandem. But to use the metaphor that Sinan started with, which is, I can see sparks, engine is not really kickstarting. Where do you see the spark that gets the engine moving? Do we start from the outside? Do we start by getting people to pour in money to create some kind of liquidity that will then kickstart the economy? Do we start by creating some kind of economic leverage through a plan that is kickstarted by the government, utilizing international experience, but also Syrian expat experience and NGOs, etc., etc.? Or do we go, as for example, Sinan is responsible for an excellent initiative trying to kickstart and you know, SMEs and local businesses and, you know, entrepreneurship. Where do we start? If you were Karam Sha'ar now given the keys to the Syrian economy, where would you start and why?
You know, I mean, transitions are messy by definition, you know, and if I go back to your analogy of Syria being now just a pile of rubble and some skeleton of a building that is still standing, I think it's natural and expected for different people to just come and remove and put like empty their own dumps in there and so on. I think that if I had to make a recommendation, I would focus much more on facilitating the flow of foreign support because there is already international support that is not getting in because the government does not have the capacity to handle it. And second, I would focus on what's happening domestically. You know, without inclusivity, there will really not be meaningful recovery here, genuinely, you know. And it's not going to be only with respect to like religious or ethnic minorities. It's inclusivity for people with different schools of thought, inclusivity of people who do not necessarily share what the government's vision for the economy is. And this, I believe, is the biggest risk. So unless they start broadening and opening up, because much of that is really about communication, not necessarily wrongdoing, you know, and there has been some very good achievements in many ministries, some bright spots here and there. But I think if this is to succeed, we need to start focusing much more on what Syrians need, what people who are living in this country are actually doing, where they spend money, where they make money from, and how they operate, as opposed to focusing most of the attention on regional dynamics and international dynamics, and where you position yourself in a place so that you can stay in power.
Excellent. Sinan, any last words? Because I have a bit of a kind of a mishmash of a conclusion. If you have something to add, Sinan, I would really love for it.
No, I think.
Karam, sorry, Karam, we're extending a few minutes as I promised you, but we're going to allow you to leave on time. So please, Sinan.
Yeah, I'll make it very short, and I think Karam summarized it beautifully at the end. Inclusivity today, it is not an international requirement. It is a necessity for success, right? And inclusivity is not only a question of gender or sect or religion. It is a question of different thoughts. And I believe that today, without this inclusivity, there is no common sense of responsibility, which is really the backbone of any success for a transitional period. Without this common responsibility, it is too high of a stake for anyone to take on their own.
Excellent. So again, my understanding, and again, I'm dumbing it down for my own tiny little brain's understanding. What you both gentlemen were saying is that the call for inclusivity, that is other people than Hayat Tahrir Sham and Man Yuharrir Yuqarrir, coming into government and actually having a say in how things are run, is not a luxury. It is a sine non qua. It is a condition without which any type of collaborative effort, which is the only way that the government is going to make the economy run, because running it on its own is too large of a task that they cannot, not even if they were Nobel laureates in economy, will be able to do. It takes everyone's effort to get the ball rolling. And without including people, and that is, again, the luxury of mistrust is something that not even this government can afford. So two things are needed: is everybody's hand it needs to be on deck, and then letting everyone have their say within a government and governance structure that allows the best opinions to come up on the surface is the only way forward for us to build the capacity to allow the money that is ready to come in, and for Syrian expats to come back and help build the economy, and then for some sort of a vision to come to the surface. I'm hoping that this analogy and this own conclusion based on your gentlemen's great input does justice to what you're saying. This is too large a topic for us to be able to cover in this 1 hour. I'm really thankful. I'm very, 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 very honored and very thankful and very happy to have had the chance to host both of you. And I'm hoping that this will be the first of many. Karam, there's no shaking me off. I'm sorry. I want to be your friend and continue to pester you. So for you, Sinan, thank you both of you for making this late night appearance in Damascus time and gracing me with your presence and your excellent opinions. I'm very humbled and very honored and a lot wiser having listened to you. Thank you everyone for sharing this hour with us from Syrian Forum. We aim to always bring you great minds and Syrians with knowledge and expertise to talk about things that matter to all of us as Syrians, but also as Syrian expats. Keep watching Syrian Forum and Al Muntada Debate for more high caliber guests such as this. This is Jamal Mansour thanking you very much for making this a great opportunity for us to talk, and hope that you join us in our coming weeks. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great afternoon or evening. And see you in our next episode.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.